Hey, welcome to this episode. We are going to be doing food plots with Pason Hermansen. Stay with us. Hi, this is Tim and Joel. Welcome to Midwest Hunting and Outdoors by Two Dumbasses,
A podcast about the outdoors, hunting,
and being a steward of the land. Welcome to Midwest Hunting and Outdoors by Two Dumbasses. Tim, today we got a special guest, Pason Hermansen. And Pason, I'll let you introduce yourself, and we're going to talk all about food plots today. Food plots, land management, that type of concept.
Yep. Yeah, I do land management for a variety of different landowners and mostly food plots. Got into doing the food plot thing a long time ago. I was pretty young before I could even drive a vehicle. And now it's kind of blown up. I work full time at a job, but then kind of have times throughout the year, spring, fall, summer. I do the management thing where whether we're brush cutting stuff, starting to brush cut, spraying, tilling, and that kind of stuff. And I really enjoy it, just like being outside. And it's something that, kind of thrived to help me and my farm and everybody else's that I've worked on. So,
hey, so let's do a little plug for your company that you got going here. So maybe first and last name, and then if you want to, information how people can contact you.
Yeah, it's Pason Hermansen. Company is Pason's Plots and Hunting Supplies. I sell real-world seed, frigid forage seed, cameras, and obviously in this area I offer food plots and land management. I got a couple big tractors with some planters, and I just keep busy throughout the year. Plant corn, beans, clover, frost seeding, anything.
Awesome.
So I really enjoy it.
What type of cameras?
I sell Tacticam and Cuddyback.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go, Timbo.
I'm a Cuddyback fan.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, Cuddybacks have been struggled last year. Couldn't get them at all, but they're actually coming up with a new camera. It's called an L series, and it's supposed to have a lot of better picture quality, a little bit smaller, compact. Still uses the D batteries, but Cuddybacks have been great to me. I know some people have, struggled with the techie part of it. I mean, my biggest thing, one cell camera, 23 remotes, or a 24 camera system for one cell plane. So that's huge.
It's
obviously
huge. Yeah.
And Tacticam actually started selling them mid-summer last year. And as far as picture quality and videos, live videos basically, they're phenomenal.
Really?
For cameras.
So I don't have any experience with Tacticam, but
yeah,
I might have to look you up for next year's trail cam test.
Absolutely.
We do a trail cam test every year.
Yes.
And haven't done a Tacticam yet. So cool.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about food plots.
yeah, I could talk cameras a whole lot longer.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Hey, just one more.
Yeah.
So we did an end of year review on the CuddyLink systems, non-cellular.
Mm.
And one of our findings is, hey, all my cameras stopped. I mean, they kept taking picture, but the date still stayed at 12/31, and every one of my cameras. And so we put it out in a video, and we had a guy out from Colorado. I think it was Colorado, and made a comment, and his cameras are obviously up in the mountains. So he said, hey, he didn't come back. But one of the things he said was, he goes, hey, we had the same problem. So it's got to be a firmware
Yeah.
issue. Right, but just heads up, keep an eye on that. So now we have two different people independently.
Just to tell you too, the home camera controls all date time on all cameras. So when you set that and they link up to that, doesn't matter what your other camera's date time is, it's going to go off that home camera once it links up. So you got to have that one right, or else all the other cameras they just don't matter.
Well, it was right, so it must have stopped.
Yeah, and
But they're all on the same firmware.
Yeah, and I've never heard of that, and that's interesting because there is problems, air codes and stuff.
Yeah.
Mostly battery related.
I'm not. So I didn't
power.
I didn't have any error codes. So mine are all solar. Mine are all solar based, and I didn't have any problems with batteries all last year.
Solar's the way to go.
And but just thought it was very interesting. And I know I digress, so we'll get back into this. But I could talk cameras a long time.
I think we have. I think we just did.
So Payson, hey, let's get into the show. You know, I mean, this is going to be awesome. So hey, let's talk about what's one of the first things. I think you and I talked earlier is around goals. When we say goals for setting up food plots, what are the things we got to consider?
Basically, what type of ground or what you're looking to get out of it. I mean, whether you're planting clover, beans, corn, whatever you're doing. I mean, I always tell people soil samples are basically the first thing you want to start doing. That's going to get your nutrients, everything that plant's going to need to get its maximum potential. It could be clover. I know in some areas that I've struggled with to get in the clover after taking the soil samples and putting the correct amount of fertilizer on it, then it just thrived. And these are really clay knobs, stuff that don't want to grow on. So that's a big thing. And prepping, I mean, some stuff just needs to be tilled up. I mean, whether it be, some guys leave a little bit of thatch, with the grass, or, if it's grassy stuff. That can definitely affect your plant's growth and everything too. And then weed control. That's huge. I know clover plots is probably the most difficult. I mean, you can obviously kill grass, clepidum, broadleafs. What a lot of guys need to understand is once that weed gets over a certain height, whether it's 3-6 inches, it's harder to kill. So you want to get that stuff sprayed right away. So after you plant it, you want to get in there and spray it. And if guys don't have the, idea of what they need to use, talk to your local agronomist, whether it's, here we got Quality Ag or whatever, ask them, and they'll mostly be able to tell you and work with you to say, hey, I got this weed, or take a picture of it. I mean, there's weed identification apps on your phone you can always look at to figure out what it is. So that's a big one.
That's what I did. Yeah. I took this weed up there and said, hey, how do I kill this? Because it overtook, and it was water hemp.
Yes.
Water hemp
That's
with
the hardest
soybean and the corn plot out here. And Joe at Ag Services helped me out on it. And yeah.
Yeah. See, that's another one. You get it. I think you can kill it if you get it under that height. But once it gets over that 6 inches, it's really, really difficult to kill.
That is true.
You can mow it, but I mean, that's just another option to slow it down, really.
Yeah. And then you're slowing everything else down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what I'm hearing you say is, hey, from a very first thing, maybe even before we start goals, we should probably do soil samples.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially if you're in a budget tight situation too. I mean, corn's obviously the most expensive thing you're going to plant. But also a guy didn't think about the chemicals are starting. I mean, the prices on them. I mean, corn, like especially, I'll jump over here. These are two different types of corn. This one is actually non-Roundup spread. You can't spray Roundup on it. It'll kill it. This one is. This one actually has a higher oil content. That's why it's so much darker. That's something that the ground has to be tilled completely weed-free. And then also you got to spray atrazine on it right away. And I've had great luck with it, but I know certain areas, if you get that water hemp in there, there's not too many ways you can kill it. I mean, I've sprayed 2,4-D on corn before and killed water hemp, but it can also stunt the plant pretty good too. So it's, you're just kind of risking it there.
Delicate balance, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So we go do our soil samples, and that soil sample basically tells us, hey, it's the recipe for what your soil needs to grow our food plot, right?
pH.
So
organic matter.
So then from there, hey, what are different types of goals that we could have for setting up a food plot that people might have?
As far as, I'd say, obviously, in the line of field, that what we like to do is attract big bucks or attract lots of deer. One of those things is you're going to have to make that plot last. We talked about, I know we're kind of skipping over a few things, but the deer density, obviously in our area is crazy. So 2 acre, 1 acre plots just don't do it. I mean, you can fence them off and maybe hopefully last till maybe September, October. But once they get in there, if it's corn, you're dealing with coons all year. If it's beans, number of different things with that. Beans usually get hit way sooner than corn. So, if you get that fenced off, keep the deer out of it, July, August, or even sooner. Sometimes they can get into June when that stuff's green, and that's just going to help your food plot to have more deer in it, hopefully in the fall when you're trying to actually hunt it.
So Payson, do we find that, when people are putting out their food plots, I know this is something I think about, but do you find that people are saying, hey, I'm a bow hunter, so that's kind of my goal. I'm going to hunt early, and so I want food plots that are going to mature early, or man, I give a hoot about archery. I work all the time. I don't have the time to archery hunt. I'm a shotgun hunter, and I need late maturing, and I need this crop to be around.
And that's what you got to decide. If you're not a bow hunter and you want to hunt early, your 2 biggest things are going to be brassicas, maybe clover. Beans can, if they stay green into that, not a lot of them are, but there are beans that actually are designed to stay greener longer, whether it's be, I sell the Real World, obviously I'm going to push them, but there's also, I can't think of Eagle Seed, I believe. It's a forage bean. It gets really tall, usually stays green a little longer. And then another factor in those type of beans is throughout the year, those beans can actually crack. Like, I'm talking later on in the year. And there are beans out there that are designed to not crack as much. I mean, you're
talking about the seed in the pod.
Correct.
The pods
to lose that, because once they fall to the ground, rain or anything, they're junk. Deer, turkeys aren't going to touch them. But there are beans, and one of the beans I sell actually, and I tested. Those beans are actually holding in March. There's some of them actually still in April that weren't cracked, and the beans weren't on the ground, which is really impressive.
Still in the pod.
Correct. Yeah. This year was a little different. I think it struggled more this year because of the dry weather. I think that really had a factor in. There's still some that I think held into the February period, but I think a lot of them lost, and that's just because of the weather. We just rain. Obviously, we didn't get any timely rains at all, and everybody, I think, struggled around here for sure. And that's another thing. I actually got guys that talk about goals. They have ponds near some of these food plots, and they water them with the ponds powder.
No kidding.
And then it's like game on, because if we have a dry year,
only show in
huge.
town, right?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, that's huge. It takes a lot of water, obviously.
A lot of water.
And I'm sure that this year they were sucking them dry pretty good. But it's an option, I guess, if you got the money and time.
Interesting.
So I have ponds, but my ponds were hurting. They were down 3 feet plus, and I wasn't going to pull any more water out of them.
No.
Still are actually down.
Yeah.
Things are starting to
there,
look up, and we got some rain, and even though it's winter, we've gotten a lot of rain this winter. So it's weird.
Yeah.
But, awesome.
Very mild winter.
So let's go back. So now, what I'd like, I think, us to do is let's assume. So, hey, what type of hunter we are? I think you're starting to set your goals, but now the next thing is hey, let's just assume, man, I got nothing but time. I'm going to hunt all year long. Let's talk about what types of options I have that I could plant for food plots, because we were just starting to dip into that a little bit. And I know there's year-long crops and there's seasonal crops. So let's talk about year-long crops and then move into seasonal.
Yeah, so obviously clover. If you look at that, clover is basically a 9-month food source. For me, deer density, it does matter, but it doesn't matter as much for clover, because you can get clover anywhere. My favorite thing to actually do with clover is maybe plant a turnip plot the fall and then frost seed into that turnip plot with clover and then just I've had some of my best clover plots with doing that type
Kind
of
of overcrop it. a little
overseed
bit.
it.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's been the best. But also along with that, clover, if it gets a dry spell like it did this year, it's just it could hurt it, but you got to really manage clover a little bit differently than you do other crops.
And then will the clover come back the next year? I mean, if you're planting
Absolutely.
a perennial.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I would suggest frost seeding it maybe every couple years. You can kind of tell usually in the fall or even in the spring because it's a little bit more bare ground. Maybe you can need frost seed those areas.
So like an overseed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is way easier than anything. Instead of having all the money and equipment for corn and beans, something like that. Which also goes into, like you're saying, with guys wanting to have that throughout the year, whether they're wanting to hunt in October or all year long. Variety is the best thing you do. I mean, corn, beans, clover. If you have that
Options.
source,
Yeah.
or area to do it, that's always. I did that actually for the first time this year on my farm, and it's kind of fun to hunt more or less because it seemed like October to November to December, there was always deer in there, something to watch, whether it's turkeys or whatever. So yeah, I mean that's a big benefit of having the variety for sure.
I would say, from our, I don't know about you, because we both have clover in certain areas of our properties. The clover I have right now is eaten to the ground.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's pretty tough, though. It comes back
Yep.
pretty
Yeah.
good, amazing. What clover will come
Yeah,
back
I mean,
from, especially younger.
You see it in
clover.
July or August, like, oh boy, yeah, and it can bounce right back out of it. Come September, October, sometimes we get the warmer weather and rain.
yeah, nice. All right, so that kind of hits our year long. How about seasonal? What are some good seasonal, like fall plots, etc.?
Yeah, we kind of touched on the subject earlier, but any type of brassicas, which I'm a variety guy when it comes to that. I mean, I don't like a lot of guys just plant purple top turnips or purple top turnips and radishes or something like that, which is great. I like the variety because those plants actually mature and are more attractive in certain times of the year too. I mean, obviously it's only a 90-day growing period with a lot of those type of fall plots, but like for instance, let's go to chicory or not chicory, rape. Mm-hmm. The rape actually, they'll hit that usually first before any of the turnips and the other things kind of seed out leaf out basically. And then throughout, in this winter when it gets cold, that stuff, obviously the turnips or radish get that sugary taste and they
Sure.
get sweet. So I like the variety just because of that. I mean, you have from, your September, October, November. I mean, if that stuff does well and you have a good source of it, then there's all kinds of different stuff the deer might like. Because I know in certain areas, like the LaVille area here, like guys are telling me like, no, deer won't touch turnips here. And I'm like, what about this? And then, well, I never tried that. I'm like, well, you need to plant a variety. So then that way you'll know.
Find out what they do like, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And and also another thing to touch on there is soil samples can be just as crucial there too, because sometimes, you might have too much of something, so you don't want to put that on, or else you could be ruining that plant's growth for sure. pH especially. I know turnips are similar. I mean, they like I do it not every year, but if we get a good rain, I actually broadcast nitrogen to get that extra boost to some of my fall plots, turnips or whatever, and it blows them up. You get a little bit of rain, say September-ish, and get that nitrogen put on there, boom. Which
Little kickstart, huh?
yeah,
Little energy drink for the.
and I spread them out. I do too. Like I don't plant turnips in the same place every year. I try to, I might plant turnips here, and then next year it'll be corn or beans. And from my experience, that's helped a lot because that turnips obviously put the nutrients back in the soil. I don't need as much fertilizer. And then the other spots where I put turnips usually thrive because they have, the year before they may have sucked all those nutrients out of that area.
And all those little micronutrients, I suppose, are pretty important.
Yeah.
That maybe, a soil sample might not pick up on.
Correct.
Payson, you were kind of mentioning we're talking about seasonal versus year-long crops, but you were kind of mentioning in our pre-conversation here about you were doing some creative things like in between rows of corn and in between rows of beans.
Yeah.
Kind of getting the best of both worlds.
September-ish, once your plant starts drying out, whether it's beans, corn, you can spread that rye, or you can put turnips in it too. They might not do as well because of the sunlight factor, but say if you brush cut, corn or something, and a lot of guys do towards the later part of the year, then that stuff that's already there will grow up. And some guys might not like that because springtime, seeding out, but you're spraying that area anyways if you're planting beans and corn there again, so you're most likely going to kill it by the time it ever gives you a problem. But that's been huge for me. My fence got knocked down. I fence in stuff. Well, another subject here later, but my fence got knocked down by the deer, and my beans in one area just got destroyed. They went from being 2 foot, 3 foot tall to barely a foot, and I was like, oh man, that sucks. I might not have much of a plot to hunt over this year. Then I broadcast that rye and stuff, and it just, it was like a carpet walking through the rows of beans there come October.
Yeah, that's fun.
And they really liked it. So it was just basically an insurance, if you look at it that way, just to kind of keep some food there where you want it. But yeah, it's a good idea to do.
Can we go into, I just want to pick your brain here a little bit. So, because we're always experimenting, trying to figure out stuff, and I think this whole clover, beans, and corn, people know that, but when you get to these seasonal crops like brassicas and having variety, I think that's kind of new for folks, right? And there's so many options out there. Maybe share out some of your unique things, where it be peas or whatever, what your experience is, and
Like cutting edge kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Creative stuff?
Yeah. So as far as the varieties go, obviously there's usually 3 different types. In fact, I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit because some of the seeds I sell actually have peas, and then some others don't, or they just have radishes. But these are 2 of the most popular ones, which one of them has 4 different types of seeds, which is turnips, radishes, rape, and then another one, which is the biggest one, one of my most popular actually, and I was talking about variety.
Sure.
12 different types of seed species in it. So, like having that variety, and it does have peas in it, or some guys even talk about cutting edge or don't even think about it. But what if a guy's got soybeans that are bad, or we dumped them on the ground, or whatever happened to where he didn't want to replant them the next year? Think about in the fall broadcasting those over your fall plots. It actually is pretty great idea because the beans, obviously will never get to their full potential, which you don't really care about. But the deer love eating those. So once they get up that 2 or 3, 4 inch height, have the leaves, deer just trim them off. They end up looking like stems, and that's something. That's cheap, way, or else there's actually varieties, in some of my other mixes that have beans in them, like the fall or
and it's nitrogen
upland
fixing
bean.
too, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And which it doesn't get as much nitrogen because that plant's not really getting, the root system's not really getting as deep, but it does, it can have that effect. And also with some of the other varieties, like those peas and oats and stuff, you can do it really any time in the fall. Even late, because the stuff doesn't need that amount of time to grow at all. You don't need that full 90 days for it to get to its potential. It's a faster growing, like rye, really. A lot of guys, rye is a big one for me. It seems like I know like my area, you just drive by a rye field and there's like 50, 60 deer on it in March or April when that stuff really starts greening up. So, and it's easy, it's cheap. You just go buy bags of rye for God's sakes and buy it and get a lot of ground covered.
Stuff grows in anything too.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Yep.
You know, and here's the other thing about rye that I found. It's kind of a, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but it's kind of it's got its own natural herbicide, right?
Yes, cover crop, basically.
If you got other things that want to grow and you have rye there, it puts off some sort of a toxin and kills off those other seeds.
In a way.
It chokes everything out. It's so thick
Yep.
too that
Yeah,
it just
it
chokes
chokes.
everything
Yes.
out. So.
Yep.
Which that's been a big thing in the ag industry, really, is them cover crop in fields. And a lot of guys don't think about it, but the wind is a huge factor in soil. I mean, especially like in northern parts of, Iowa here, but they're actually, they can change their soil just by really, really windy weeks or days and carry a lot of their nutrients away in that soil because of the wind. I mean, and that's rye is something that's holding it because it's not allowing that wind to just uptake. Because a lot of guys, you do some fall tilling or something and that stuff dries out like we had this year. It's crazy dry weather and they get them dust devils or whatever they call, and it can carry a lot of nutrients away.
Like the wind erosion is what you're saying is
Yep.
basically taking the
and that
topsoil
rye
out
has
of
been huge for them to help. So as soon as they get the beans and corn out, they're drilling that stuff right in, and that's in the springtime. You don't. I mean, obviously you spray it to knock it out, but there's no problems with just drilling right into it, whether it be beans or corn. I've done it a few times, and it's turned out really good, especially beans, drilling right into that stuff. I mean, I think there's been sometimes there's 2 or 3 foot tall, and there's actually turnips that had been in there too that had all seeded out. And I sprayed it the one time, it knocked them all out, and it turned out to be an unbelievable bean.
Then come back and drill your weed on top of it.
Yep, in the fall.
Thanks for listening or watching our show. We have some exciting topics and guests coming up.
We ask that you subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
We look forward to hearing your suggestions for topics,
Questions and comments. This is Two Dumbasses signing off. Until next time,
be safe,
have fun, and get outdoors.